Welcome to Entrepreneur State of Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Dale Caldwell, and I have a good friend of mine, Glenn Best, who's the Executive Director of the Black Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame. Welcome, Glenn. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Dale. Thank you for inviting me here this morning.
Well, as my audience knows, I always like origin stories, and we've known each other for a while, but the audience may not know you. And so where did you grow up, and kind of what's your background?
Well, it's fairly interesting because it's not as normal as most. But I grew up in my hometown of Lynchburg, Virginia. Many folks may not know much about Lynchburg, but a town that sits in the mountainous areas of Blue Ridge Mountains, and but had a great education growing up there, and come from a military family, so obviously moved around a lot in my younger years. But I've had the good fortune of meeting a lot of good people and working with a lot of different organizations and businesses in my career, which has kind of led me to my current state here in New Jersey. So and we happen to have met each other some years ago when I worked with the charter schools here in New Jersey. So yeah, we've had a very interesting career in working in both working in both the education and business space. So thank you.
Well, and again, and you're modest. Now, Glenn has one of the best networks of people that I know. I mean, he just seems to know everybody, and is key. And Lynchburg I got to know because what part of my entrepreneurial life is doing superintendent searches. So I had an opportunity to do the superintendent search for Lynchburg, Virginia, and got to know the town. And really, what a great town that you grew up in. Also, I have to thank you that Glenn is good friends with NBA legend Ralph Sampson, and because of Glenn, I was interviewed on Ralph Sampson's podcast, and then we just interviewed Ralph Sampson, and so I just thank you for your friendship over the years. So now, Executive Director of the Black Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame, and so you and I worked to found that, and so tell me, what is that organization all about?
So the Black Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame has a few different overarching themes. So one is obviously to recognize and commemorate the accomplishments of past Black entrepreneurs. Many of us know that historically, our history, although we have a lot of accomplishments, it's not always in the traditional historical textbooks and things that we learned growing up. We want to make sure that, one, we're capturing that information. For many years, a lot of our history has been passed down to our kids verbally from our elders. We're trying to make sure that we commemorate this excellence amongst our community, and make sure that both the current Black entrepreneurs and the future entrepreneurs, aspiring entrepreneurs, are aware that, hey, we've always had that entrepreneurial spirit and have made tremendous accomplishments and have contributed to the economic development, the industry that exists here in our country, and have played a major part in the fabric of the business community across the country. So that's one part of it. And then the second part is to also create a pathway and create some mechanisms and strategic partnerships that will help elevate and continue to expand the entire framework around Black entrepreneurship. Oftentimes, people don't know how to really engage in that particular space because they don't have the same mentorship, the same guidance, the same access to resources, the same access to legal counsel as other communities do. And so what we find is the Black Entrepreneur Hall of Fame can actually serve as a intermediary to help bridge that and actually bring companies, businesses together that can actually help support each other. And so through some of the programming that we will be doing, in addition to our recognition of past Black entrepreneurs, we will be creating some programs that will help launch or help support and stand up existing Black entrepreneurs across the country. So we're excited about the opportunities to really, one, highlight those accomplishments, but furthermore, to elevate and encourage future Black entrepreneurs who a generation from now may also be inducted into the Black Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame.
Well, one of the things, and people will have the question, well, why do we need a Black Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame? And in a little while, we'll talk about the Black Excellence Alliance. And one of the realities is that the experience of Black entrepreneurs in the United States has not always been, what it should be. And there have been opportunities. Entrepreneurship is really living the American dream. And so one of the places that Glenn and I know very, very dearly is the Greenwood section of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so why is that important, Glenn?
So one of the unfortunate historical things that we have in our history is the incident that occurred 100 years ago this coming May in the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma. That was the center of the Black community. It was the economic engine of that community in terms of Black entrepreneurs and Black innovation. They had a very thriving and robust community and pretty much self-contained. That incident, an incident occurred where the white community basically destroyed the Greenwood district, all the businesses, all the barbershops, the banks, even the church that existed there were literally burned down, burned to the ground, and many of those individuals who were there, in addition to some of them being physically harmed, were displaced. That happened that occurred there. It was a story that was not spoken of for many generations after that happened, and it wasn't until the most recent decade, and not even a full decade, that the state actually started to acknowledge the fact of this occurrence, because the Black families who resided there were never fully made whole again. They were never compensated. Many of them moved away and never returned. But that's the tragic part of the incident. Mm-hmm. But the other part that we want to highlight is what existed pre that incident, the Black Wall Street massacre. The thriving community, the business success that they had. They actually had, you had a Black community in 1921 that had all these thriving businesses, mm-hmm. including several that had their own planes. Right. They had their own bank. They had their own hotel. And most people don't even know that existed in 1921. Now this is post desegregation. Right. So there's a lot of things that were going on, and never could have happened in some other environments. Mm-hmm. But they coalesced there. Many of the Blacks who were there, many of them were veterans, mm-hmm. Who understood discipline, and they were and knew how to get things done. And they utilized that knowledge and their skills to create that community. So, we deliberately decided to have our induction ceremony there because we feel that that's important to really elevate and highlight the fact that success can happen. And we've had that when we talk about the Black Excellence Alliance, that excellence existed there in Greenwood even prior to that incident happening. Yes, the community was destroyed, but they're in a rebuilding mode, and we think that it can be rebuilt again, and it can be replicated. That whole concept, we've seen it replicated in communities in different parts of the country generations ago as well. So we know that it can happen. We know that it works. It ties in to many of the initiatives that our organization, the Black Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame, is part of a collective of organizations called the Black Excellence Alliance. So we know that they'll be focused on entrepreneur zones, which Dale, you and others are driving that effort. So mm-hmm. these things all tie in together in helping us to kind of push forward. How do we get back to that type of ingenuity of creativity, and bring it all together to coalesce, to make a broader path forward. Because we really believe that entrepreneurship is really the mechanism, along with education, for driving the success of the Black community.
Absolutely, and the entrepreneurial mindset too, and that whether you're running a nonprofit, whether you're running a church, whether you're running a business. But the other thing is to really put parentheses is, so Plessy versus Ferguson was, the Supreme Court said segregation is the law of the land. And so this community that Glenn just eloquently talked about, really didn't get any government support. In fact, it was just the opposite, but they became self-sufficient and they supported each other. And then the white supremacists came and bombed by plane and by foot this place. And I think it was 7 or more families had, as you said, Glenn, had planes. So we look at that now and we say, well, it was successful then. Why not use entrepreneurship to really transform America and transform poverty in those communities that are struggling with crime and poverty and homelessness, et cetera, et cetera. And the Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame is really playing a critical role. And so Glenn and I were part of a group that started this, as he alluded to, this Black Excellence Alliance, which has a number of other elements within it, but it's bringing people together. And so Glenn, it's been wonderful working with you, and I'm telling you, it's so exciting to we have regular meetings to really see around the country how many people are like-minded. And so talk a little bit about so on May 30th this induction ceremony. Tell the audience a little bit about what's going on and what are you planning.
Yes, indeed. So we're planning to have our inaugural induction ceremony in Tulsa, in collaboration with the University of Tulsa, and in commemoration of the 100th anniversary of the Black Wall Street Massacre event. We're having our event on Sunday, May the 30th, which is the day before the actual incident occurred. And we're planning to, in both the Black Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame and the Black Inventors Hall of Fame, we will have a joint induction ceremony at our venue in Tulsa, at the Tulsa Hyatt. And the Black Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame will be inducting 6 individuals into our Hall of Fame.
Glenn, hold that thought. We're gonna take a commercial break, and before you reveal, before we do the worldwide reveal of the inductees, we're gonna take a quick break and then come back right after the break.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Welcome back to Entrepreneur State of Mind. I have Glenn Best, the Executive Director of the Black Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame, and we were just talking about this May 30th ceremony in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but it will also be virtual. We'll have a limited number in Tulsa, but we'll present it around the world, and we're going to have the Black Entrepreneurs induction ceremony as well as the Black Inventors ceremony. So Glenn, who are the confirmed inductees now?
So we've been very deliberate in our outreach to specific entrepreneurs as well as Black inventors around this inaugural induction ceremony. So and some are still pending, but from the Black Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame, we plan to induct the late Reginald Lewis. We also plan to induct the late Herman Russell, as well as Lonnie Johnson, the Super Soaker, and there others will be revealed shortly. And as we've been preparing for this event, we've had a series of panel discussions each month featuring Black entrepreneurs. We've had Don Peebles with the Peebles Corporation featured, Ralph Sampson, as you mentioned earlier. We've had Albert White, who is spoken with, who will also be joining us at the event. And this week coming up, we have Warren Thompson, CEO of Thompson Hospitality. So we've been all these activities, along with in collaboration with the University of Tulsa, are leading up to this grand induction ceremony that we plan to host there. Again, acknowledging the success and the creative spirit of these Black entrepreneurs, and basically showing this roadmap of how things can be moving forward, because we believe they were the pioneer. Reginald Lewis was definitely a pioneer in that space, and did some things that had rarely been seen again since. So we hope that will be a catalyst for inspiring another generation of Black entrepreneurs. We believe it will be. And we look forward to supporting and acknowledging their success, and making sure that on a broader scale that everyone, and of course many people know about some of these inductees, but there will always be another generation of youth who say, "Oh, I didn't know about that." So that's the purpose, to make sure that we promote our history and our legacy moving forward, and inspire another generation of young Black entrepreneurs.
But Glenn, there are so many incredible stories that maybe some African Americans of a certain age know some of them, but most folks who are white or Asian or Latino don't know about this and other things. And they're really American stories. They're incredible American stories. So in our speaker series, we had Albert White, and so I learned something about this company, Network Solutions, that virtually nobody knows, but it's really important. Share something about this Network Solutions. What was that all about?
So Albert White was a member of the Network Solutions company, the team that pretty much they had before the internet was fully commercialized and public. Right. When the Department of Defense was still pretty much in charge of that. They were working through they had the National Science Foundation put out a bid for companies to manage the domain names. So Net Solutions, the company that Albert White worked for, was I think one of only maybe two companies that even submitted a bid and had the capabilities to do that. Now, when they won the bid, and this is working through the National Science Foundation, it was not in a commercial fashion. It was pretty much like a research type of program. So they didn't really receive major funding. It was basically just to be able to do the project, and then they in turn coordinated the issuing of the domain names to organizations. So as a result, over a period of time, they really were not able to manage. They were not able to maintain that, because they just did not have the capital to be able to maintain it, and because they weren't able to commercialize it, they weren't able to really access additional funds to say, oh, we'll be able to make this money, because they couldn't really show that, right, because they weren't in a position to bank that. So they ended up selling the company, and I think they sold for maybe around $4 or $5 million. And about 6 months later, the government opened it up so that it could become commercialized, and the company that they sold it to ended up making around $21 billion. That's a story that's not known widely. No. It's probably known more now that his book is out. Right. But it wasn't known by many people. Most people didn't even know that there was a Black company involved in that in the early stages of the internet. So, and that's but that story is indicative of many stories of Black entrepreneurs around the country. Not maybe to that magnitude, but there are 1,000 similar stories where a Black entrepreneur, a Black-owned company, was not able to make the next level leap because of either lack of access to capital, or lack of access to the market, any number of different things that other companies did not always have to face those barriers.
Right.
Those have always been the challenges for Black companies coming into the market in many areas for many reasons. And so, and that's the other part. So we have to share these stories, one, so that we can position the next wave of Black entrepreneurs, one, so that they don't fall victim to the same things that happen to this.
The lack of capital. And so and thank you for that story. So you know, an African American owned company was the first to give out website address names. That's such a powerful thing. And you don't read about that in the history books. You don't read about Greenwood, the 1921 massacre, which, by the way, was not the only one in the country. And the reason I say this is significant is that these folks were living the American dream. They made a lot of money, had their own businesses, were self-sufficient, not relying on government, but white supremacists, and the government and conspiracy actually bombed them. But there are other segments of the country where the Black entrepreneurs were doing very well. So now we're in a time where we're looking at poverty at record levels in Philadelphia and New York and LA and Chicago and Houston and Atlanta. And so part of the reason I created this idea called Entrepreneur Zones is that what we want to do is create a Greenwood district in every one of these communities so that we have the fuel to take people off of poverty and welfare. And that's good for America. And the beauty of that is I've had very conservative folks and very liberal folks who like the idea. So things like the Black Entrepreneurs Hall of Fame are really for everybody. They're really for everybody. And the reason I was inspired to found it and then asked Glenn to be the executive director is I started something called the Black Tennis Hall of Fame. And people didn't realize that tennis has been part of the Black community for over 100 years. And we did an exhibit that was at the US Open that 35,000 people saw. And it was really powerful to me where a lot of the young white tennis players who all wanted to be pros would see what the Black players went through. Some of them and their moms would tear up and saying, you know, I'm complaining about line calls. These folks had to go through so much more. And so if we as Americans can really tell the stories of these things, not to beat up America, but to really say there is excellence in every corner of this country, let's celebrate that and empower the next generation to be successful so that we can have a much more successful country than we even do now. And so you're starting to do some STEM stuff. Talk a little bit about what you're doing with STEM.
So through our Black Inventors Hall of Fame, we have a number of STEM initiatives that encourage critical thinking and creative thinking from our youth. And so there's STEM challenges, there's STEM projects where these students, the young people, actually have to utilize some thinking, some creative thought. But the interesting thing is that it's done in a way that engages them,
right?
Because youth have to be engaged,
right? Entertained.
And so
right.
we there's a methodology around how you engage young people, keep their attention,
right.
Make them interested in these STEM type of programs, and so we make it fun. And at the same time they're learning while they're having fun.
While they're having fun.
There's a few programs that we have launched in both the K through 12 space, and then there's some things that we're doing in the higher ed space with students to actually work with students in the K through 12 space.
Wonderful.
So we're going to be you're going to hear more about some of those programs. Some of them are already in going on right now.
Wonderful.
At the event in Tulsa, we actually plan to showcase. We had a STEM challenge that the higher education students are involved in, and the students who win that particular competition are going to be acknowledged at our our induction ceremony.
Wonderful,
So
wonderful.
we're looking forward to being able to highlight those students, because again, it's connecting this. It's
Yeah.
connecting the past, the present,
And the future.
with the future.
Yeah.
And so we're showing, we're letting these students know that, hey, this is something that's attainable.
Yeah.
It's not something that's out of the realm of possibility.
Exactly.
We want them to know that, yes, it's possible. You could be doing the very same thing that we're talking about.
Exactly.
And so this is a way of inspiring them and connecting them. And one thing we know is that connecting youth to another generation is also, because most of our elders, they love to share information.
Right,
with us.
exactly.
We just have to listen.
But things have changed, Glenn. If you're not young and sexy, people, young people don't want to, where our generation was, we revered senior citizens. And so, well, again, this show goes by so quickly. We're at the end of time. But Glenn, this has been great. Thanks for your insights. And I want to thank our audience for watching Entrepreneur State of Mind. Thanks again, Glenn, and we will see you next time. So take care, everyone. Thank you for watching Entrepreneur State of Mind. We'll see you next week.